In retirement. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen retires. Democrats see an opportunity. The question is, did they nominate the right candidate? Former Clinton cabinet member Donna Shalala against a former TV host. And a lot of Democrats thinking that this one here could be a missed opportunity because you have someone who more fits with a diverse Latino community here. We'll watch as this one plays out again. Part of the building blocks to get you to 23 for the Democrats in Florida. Also at 7 o'clock, is Georgia. The governor's race is the marquee contest here. Brian Kemp, the Republican, Stacey Abrams, the Democrat. But as that race plays out, both parties pour money into turnout. Again, when you look at the House races, this is a district in any other year should be Republican. We think it's likely Republican, but let's see. The Democrats thinking the governor's race might help them with turnout here in Georgia 6 and Georgia 7. Again, if you're thinking, how do we get to 23?
We are just seconds away now from the first statewide polls closing the 2018 midterms. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Brett Baer. This is exciting. The countdown. Gotta love this. Outside. We'll just let it play there. Polls closing. We've got Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, Vermont, Georgia, South Carolina, and most of Florida, most of New Hampshire. Our first race calls of the night, and we can give them to you now.
There we go.
It is 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and polls have closed in half a dozen states, so the Fox News decision desk can now begin to project winners and losers in crucial elections across the country. Now, the two most closely watched races at this hour are the Indiana Senate race.
We have a Senate projection right now. CNN projects that Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, the incumbent, he will be reelected. Remember, he caucuses with the Democrats, a win for the Democrats. In Virginia, Tim Kaine, the incumbent Democrat, CNN projects he will get another 6 years in the United States Senate. Tim Kaine, the winner in Virginia. In Indiana, right now, too early to call. Joe Donnelly, the Democratic incumbent, facing Mike Braun. A very, very tough fight going on in Indiana right now. Let's take a look at the balance of power.
But the Fox News decision desk can project, this is a big surprise, that independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who identifies as a Democratic socialist, will easily win a third term by defeating Republican Lawrence Zupan. Sanders unsuccessfully challenged Hillary Clinton back in 2016, as you all well remember, in the presidential primaries. And some expect that Bernie Sanders may be on the list again in 2020.
And Clinton's running mate in 2016, Democratic Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, will win a second term tonight by beating Republican challenger Corey Stewart, according to our Fox News voter analysis, and the raw vote total is starting to come in.
So we can also now project that Republican South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster will win his race against Democrat James Smith.
Now, remember, the two overarching questions of the night are whether Democrats can take control of the House and whether Republicans can keep control of the Senate. It's obviously too early to make those all-important projections. We're also watching governor's races around the country that will have a big impact on 2020 as well.
So we've got the
Democratic turnout that Stacey Abrams has been talking about. This is one of the places you'll see it in Fulton County, in this portion of the district. You'll also see it in DeKalb County. This is about a quarter of the district. Handel lost here in her special election. If you got surge Democratic turnout for the governor's race, you'll see it here too. You probably see a little bit of it in Cobb County too, the Cobb County portion of this district. So if Stacey Abrams is delivering in the governor's race, especially in this Atlanta area, it could spill over to this district, and it could also spill over right next door to the 7th district. This was sort of a late arrival on the Democratic target list, on the national media's list. You had Rob Woodall, the incumbent there. He's in a tough race. I'm told we may have some numbers here in Florida. Let me just quickly see. We do. So Florida, huge early voting state, right? We get a lot of vote. We get it very fast. You see, we've already got over 100,000 dumped right now. Rick Scott, the challenger, running ahead here, but you can see all of this is coming from one county. Pasco, oh, this is interesting. Pasco County in 2016 was the county we looked at in the Gulf Coast region, and we said something's happening here for Trump. Now, this is just early vote. This is just early. But when Donald Trump, Pasco County, north of St. Petersburg, what you get here, a lot of retirees, a lot of folks from the Midwest. They come down to the Gulf Coast. They're in Pasco County. Rick Scott, early on here, so I'm not saying read anything into this, but keep an eye on this one, because this is the question we're asking tonight in the Senate race and in the governor's races. Can DeSantis perform at that Trump level in places like Pasco County, or does it recede? Does it go back to where Mitt Romney was in 2012? It wasn't enough for Mitt Romney in 2012. It was enough for Trump in 2016. So getting our first, this is another one to keep an eye on. Citrus County, it'll be a Republican county. The question is, how much is it going to be a Republican county? So just getting a scattering in, and it looks like some Democratic areas. Osceola County, the story in Osceola County, going to be a large Hispanic vote here, particularly. There is a large Puerto Rican population in Osceola County, talking about like Kissimmee here. So Bill Nelson expected to win here. But again, we talked about the Puerto Rican vote, especially in light of the disaster there last year. What effect might that have? This is a county to keep
with him when you agree with him, or just clinging to him as DeSantis did. It's not clear.
It's not clear at all. Let's go over to John. John, let's take a closer look at Florida right now. Results are beginning to come in. There's some key battles underway.
And again, 3% reporting in Florida. Watching the map fill in. Republicans generally do well out here in the western part of the state. Orlando, the suburbs below them, key to Democrats. So you see right here, you pop it up. 59, 60% there. I just want to go back in time to look how this one played in the governor's race last time, just to get a sense. If you go back to 2014 and you look at the same county, Charlie Crist, the Democratic candidate, won this county with just shy of 52% of the vote. One of the things you watch, that was a very close race. So you're watching here, again, we're very early in the count here. But if Andrew Gillum running is near 60%, stronger than Charlie Crist, that would be a good sign for him if you look at it. To the point you were just making, I just want to show you something about these two races. If you've watched the polling in Florida at the end of this campaign, the Senate race and the governor's race have been running almost exactly tied if you look at the polling. So one of the things you're going to watch tonight, Jake just noted, Ron DeSantis, a pro-Trump congressman, running on the Trump message. Rick Scott, the Republican governor, saying, whoa, 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 I believe the higher death toll in Puerto Rico, some distance from President Trump. So how does this play out? Just look at the vote count. 125,000 in the early vote count for Ron DeSantis. Let's look at the Senate race. Rick Scott outperforming him a little bit in terms of the same counties reporting as the vote comes in. 128 to 125. Let's look at the Senate race. 113.5 is your change there. Let's look at the governor's race. 111. So the Senate candidates outperforming a little bit. We'll watch as that plays out across. Again, if you look at the map, very early for the Democrats, whether it's the Senate race or the governor's race, down here, up here, across here. Critical for the Democrats. A lot of rural area. One of the big questions here, because of the recent hurricanes, here, how's the turnout? Up here, some parts of the Republican panhandle have suffered some pretty big hits from weather-related stuff. How's the turnover up there? President had a rally here. President had another rally down here. President has been all in this race, sometimes to the little bit of nervousness in the Scott campaign for that. But as we watch this play out, whether we're talking senator, whether we're talking governor, whether we're talking presidential campaigns, Florida always very tight. Just want to see if we're getting no results yet from our House key races. As we're waiting, a lot of House districts in the state of Florida, obviously. But we look, you see, there's overall right there, but none coming in the key races just
Let's
yet.
take a look at the Senate in Florida right now. And for any Democrat, as you know, statewide in Florida to win, in the southern part of Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, the Democrats have to crush it.
Not just yes, exactly. That's a great word. They have to crush.
Take a look at some of the results coming in. Nelson just pulled ahead. 7% of the vote is in.
Nelson just pulled ahead. So where's that vote coming from? We see it's coming in. It's not coming in down here yet. If you're Bill Nelson, you want to be ahead when this comes in. This is traditionally a later vote. Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Broward County traditionally comes in a little later. If you're the Democrat, you know you're going to win down here. The question is by how much. So you're waiting for that. So let's just see what happened there. Let me blank this off here. Those votes came in over here. Pinellas County.
Shade of blue, a little bit of blue here in Virginia. Doesn't mean a whole lot right now, so we'll gauge it throughout the night and let you know as we know how to interpret these results. But I'll go into Indiana right now because it's starting to get a little bit of red as Republican, blue as Democrat. Joe Donnelly against the Republican, Mike Braun, the businessman. A little bit of 96,000 to 64,000 votes coming in. This is what you always watch in Indiana. This is Marion County, Indianapolis. Far too early for any results to come back in, but we'll watch that throughout the evening and try to give you a bit of a projection. I think based on history, the best way to understand this matchup here was Joe Donnelly back in 2012. He won his Senate race by 6 points. But if you watch here now at the presidential level to see what Donald Trump did, just 2 years ago, an easy winner all over the state of Indiana, beat Hillary Clinton by 20 points. So we'll see what sort of metric we get on that throughout the night. The next closing is coming up at about 7:30. And I think one thing to really key in on is this Senate race in West Virginia. I'll take you there right now. The Democrat is Joe Manchin up against the Republican Patrick Morrisey, the AG there. Joe Manchin was a popular Democratic governor in that state. He voted against Brett Kavanaugh, reversed that. He voted against the tax bill. He voted for Brett Kavanaugh just about a month ago. And this was Manchin's result in 2012. A lot of blue all over West Virginia. But if you come back to the presidential level, just 2 years ago, you see what the president did there. Strong popularity in the Mountaineer state, getting nearly 70% of the vote in West Virginia. So quickly here on the closing map, polling's coming up in about 21 minutes. Talk about West Virginia, talk about North Carolina, talk about Ohio as we go throughout the night. Brett, Martha, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So meanwhile, new information coming in now from our voter analysis surveys showing
what
that
you're looking
President
for
Trump
is a Trump effect. Or how many voters that voted for Trump now turn and say go Democrat for Senate or for governor this time. So that's one thing we look at. That's the House map. There's the Senate map. The Senate candidate Bill Nelson still ahead.
In Pinellas County.
Remember, this is giant Florida, yeah, and we'll pull it out here. He's still ahead statewide. It's a big state, 8% of the vote. We have a very long way to go, but as the votes come in, you'd always rather be ahead than behind. The Democrat, 35,000 votes, a little short of that, 34,000 votes there. Let's check the governor's race, 27, just shy of that there. These two races tracking each other. If you want to draw a line across here.
Go to Tallahassee for a moment. I'm curious, Leon County, to see what's going on over there. You see the Democrats are ahead.
And they should be, but Andrew Gillum is the mayor, and this is one of the questions here. This is one of the questions, one of the pockets in Florida where you do have an African-American vote, absolutely vital to any Democrat. One of the questions was, because of Andrew Gillum, could he put together more of an Obama-like coalition to not only help his own campaign, but maybe to help Bill Nelson as well, to have more voters come out in the race for governor who might not come out in the race for Senate, especially in a midterm year, but perhaps energized by this race. You saw President Obama spending some time on this race, Oprah Winfrey spending some time thinking about this race. So again, this is just Leon County, Tallahassee, but it is a place where if a Democrat is going to win, they have to run it up big. Let's just do the presidential comparison just to take a look. Again, Hillary Clinton carried this county with 60% of the vote. Florida was a very competitive election in 2016, carried by President Trump ultimately, but it was close. And so you look at a 60% there for Hillary Clinton. You come back to the governor's race now. It's defaulting to the House races for me there, but if you look at it there, you see that there. So that's Leon County. Let's pull it back out, make sure nothing has changed. Just shy of 27,000 lead for the Democrat in the governor's race. Check the Senate vote again. It's holding in. So those are 8% in, 34 and some change there for Bill Nelson. Again, a lot of votes across here. The Orlando suburbs have grown. The Tampa suburbs have grown. St. Pete has grown. Tallahassee's vital for the Democrats. If you're the Republicans, you don't like being behind, but you're looking at the map and you're thinking, okay.
That's Steve Stiver's projection that the House Republican majority would narrowly be preserved. If that were to occur, that would be sensational news here at the White House. Possibly not take the bludgeoning that they're preparing for themselves for in gubernatorial elections, and it would be an all-out victory. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. We've got lots of votes to count and lots of data to go through. But the Republican, Steve Stivers, who's in charge of the National Republican Congressional Committee, told the White House 4 o'clock this afternoon that's his projected net loss, 17 to 21 seats.
Yeah.
That would be, if it were to come to fruition, nothing short of breakthrough good news here at the White House.
I mean, I would imagine that the president, if that were to be the case, would feel a certain sense of vindication in his strategy. Right? You had Republican lawmakers who wanted him to talk more about the economy, and instead we saw the president not focusing on that, but on immigration.
So I had a lot of conversations with Republican strategists who've been around a lot of midterm elections and presidential elections over the last weekend, as you might expect. And the interesting observation they made, and I'll get to immigration in just a second, is this.
Surprised everybody on Election Day. Can DeSantis, who tethered himself so closely to Trump, trying to replicate that strategy, can he replicate that performance? Or do we look at something more like 2012?
Steve, thank you. And thank you for the context in every case, showing us the Trump performance and in some cases the Romney performance. And just holler if you have results that we need to go to. In the meantime, we keep telling folks it's going to be a minute before we have answers on Georgia. Katie Tur.
The economy grows like mad. And stock market's over the moon, right? And your tax cut's unpopular. How can that be? I'll tell you, I think what happened there, and it happens almost every time, is Republicans are for tax cuts, not so much because they want people to have money in their pockets so they'll spend it, although they're for that as well. They want to see the economy grow, and they think tax cuts help it to do that. But what happens in the debates over tax cuts, it always comes down to who gets what in the cut itself, not the larger benefit to the overall economy. So that connection was never made by the Republicans, and I think part of the result is what you see tonight. You've got a roaring economy in the wake of tax cuts, and the tax cuts not popular.
And that raises the question about how well they sold it.
Exactly right.
How well they discussed it.
Exactly the argument
Yep.
they used to sell it, and it's a trap, and Republicans fall into it every time. Their critics say, well, look who's getting this and look who's getting that. In fact, this was not a tax cut for the rich. The rich didn't do very well in this tax cut. It was very much a middle-class tax cut. Even that point didn't get sold. But the one that really didn't get sold was the growth component.
Laura, you know, the president did talk about the economy on the trail, despite reporting that he didn't. There was an appeal to make him talk about it more. But you look at our vote total approval of President Trump on border security, even split, 50-49. And immigration is a high issue in everything that we see in the numbers here.
Immigration is a 1, 2, or 3 issue for most voters, so it usually settles around 3, and the third most important issue. I think a lot of Republicans are frustrated that the wall hasn't gotten built. They're directing their frustration, I think, at Congress. I think, you know, Trump is on the ballot, obviously, but the president is more popular than Congress, both Republicans and Democrats. And that's nationally. And I think we have to remember that President Trump has been carrying this
average Democrat in some ways. For example, he does not support abortion rights to a certain extent. So tell us a little bit about how he's managed to carve out a political career in a pretty red state as a Democrat.
Well, you know, primarily, Dan, he touts his voting record as, 62% of the time he says that he votes along with Trump's agenda. He's a Democrat who actually says, look, I'm pro-building a wall. He says, I don't represent, the president. I represent the people of Indiana. Immigration is a big issue here. He but voted against Brett Kavanaugh. And one thing that's really interesting in these preliminary exit polls that we've seen, 53% of Hoosiers said that his vote against Kavanaugh was important in their vote. Now, the thing is, we don't know if that's favorable to him or unfavorable. Joe Donnelly just made an appearance down here on this stage just a little while ago, and I asked him if he was able to kind of read the tea leaves as far as what that meant. And he said, you know what, I don't know if that's going to be something that people like about me or not, but it was...
Coming up, we're going to talk about the fight for control of Congress with former GNC chairman and Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell.
Different in the coming years.
Katie Turr in Atlanta. Katie, thank you for that. Reminder to all our viewers that elections are local matters. Elections are successful because of people like the woman we just met.
Valerie, my heart goes out to you. She gets up there and says, how is it? Crazy. Problems?
Crazy.
No.
It was crazy.
That sort of determination.
She
I absolutely
speaks for
love
all
it.
of us.
That's right.
Another break for us. When we come back, we have been joined by Steve Schmidt. We have been joined by Chuck Todd. We will ask them both to weigh in on what we're witnessing this midterm election night 2018.
To die or at least be significantly delayed. And this president has already said he intends to shake up his cabinet regardless of the result of this midterm election. If there are other vacancies on the Supreme Court or in federal appeals court or district court places, benches rather, that the president wants to fill, he needs a Republican Senate to be in charge of that executive calendar, when to schedule those nominations, when to vote on them, and deliver them to this White House. So the White House weeks ago said, if the suburbs are tough and we can't, difficult to win there, but we can win Trump-carried states in Senate races, let's prioritize the Senate over the House and see if in that process of mobilizing Trump supporters, we can't surprise people in the House. Not part of the integrated strategy, but the Trump world believes a couple of things. One, exit polls are no longer reliable about capturing Trump voter sentiment. Why? Because many Trump supporters simply will not participate in exit polls, point one. Point two, the White House does believe there is probably 1 to 2, and in some places 3 or 4% of voters who are shy Trump voters. That's what they call them here at the White House. And what do they mean by that? They're so shy, so hesitant to talk about their underlying support for the president, they won't tell their spouse, they won't tell their friends, they won't tell their kids. But when they get in the election booth, that's how they vote. This White House believes that there is, within this Trump coalition, 3 to 4 points of give that is simply unmeasurable, either in exit polls, day-to-day tracking polls, or any other mechanism, because people simply will not say out loud what what they actually intend to do when they cast their ballot.
So interesting.
Back and forth all night. Andrew Gillum, at this point, 70,000 votes ahead. A closely watched race in the third largest state in the country. A history on the line tonight for Andrew Gillum, and Ron DeSantis obviously trying to play some defense and keep this governor's race in Republican hands. He was Donald Trump's handpicked candidate, and at this point, he's lagging in the votes at this point, behind by about 70,000 votes, with 15% reporting at this point. And back to Wolf and John at the Magic Wall.
All right, Nia, thank you. It looks like the House of Representatives in Florida, votes are beginning to come in pretty quickly.
Starting to fill in pretty quickly. And again, Florida, big state, a place where Democrats hope to flip 2, 3, maybe more Republican seats on their path. They need 23 net. So let's look, again, results coming in early. Let's look down here at the 15th Congressional District. The Republican, Ross Spano, the Democrat, Kristen Carlson, the Democrat ahead. This would be a flip for the Democrats if they can get it. The Democrat ahead right now, 51-48. Again, when you don't see the percentage down here, that generally means either the problem with the system or it's the early vote. So if it's just early voting, we don't have live voting coming in, we'll see how this goes as we go through it. But you have a Democrat ahead there. That's one. If you pull back out to the map, this will be helpful to people watching at home during the night. Emphasis on leading. These are not called races, but there are 10 Democrats leading and 5 Republicans leading. 2 of these Democrats are leading in Republican-held districts. So you tap that and you take a look. The other one is here. This was not on our list of target races. And again, we're looking at the early vote here. But the Democrat is ahead here over the Republican incumbent, Neil Dunn. Why do you keep an eye on this race? Just in case. Again, it wasn't on our list of key races we thought could flip. But remember, the Democratic candidate for governor, Andrew Gillum, is the mayor of Tallahassee. So you're looking here just to see if maybe there's a switch there, and you go through it here. So some of the other races we're watching in Florida are down here, and you come down in southern Florida. We talked about these earlier before we had any results. The Democrat leading in the 26th district, the Republican incumbent, Carlos Curbelo, has been sharply critical of the president in recent days, saying your immigration message is over the top. Yes, we need secure borders, but the caravan are not invaders. They're not bad people. You shouldn't take away birthright citizenship. Well, watch this one. This could be a pickup for the Democrats here. Then you come next door to this district here. Ileana Russ-Leighton, the Republican incumbent, retires. Donna Shalala ahead here. Again, that's a decent vote count in a congressional race so far, 52-45. A former television personality running in the district. Republicans found a good candidate. This is a seat the Democrats really think they do need to pick up. So that's 27 there. I just want to pull it out to take a look again. If you look at it this way here, the goal is for Democrats. Let's tap this out. Come out here. Come back out. There we go. If you're the Democrats, you need a net goal of 23. You're leading right now in 5 Republican districts. It's early. Democrats think they can flip 2, 3, maybe more, but 2 or 3 is their target in Florida. 3 would be great for the Democrats. They're leading right now in 5 Republican districts. So if you're sitting in Democratic headquarters, you're thinking, how do we get to 23? It's a big state. It offers you several opportunities, and you're encouraged by the early results, but emphasis on early.
Well over 2 million votes have been counted statewide. Let me show you some of what's just come in. Now, this is a county right here. This was one of those places where Donald Trump outperformed Mitt Romney. The net was 6 point. It was a 6-point improvement for Trump over Romney in terms of the margin. You see Trump won here by 20 points. The margin right now, 13 points. Again, the early vote in this county, but this is, more than half the vote has been counted here. So DeSantis, again, that is closer to a Mitt Romney number. In fact, I think that might be actually the exact Mitt Romney number. Let me just see if I can get that. Yeah, 56-43 was the Mitt Romney-Barack Obama number. So again, the question with the same-day vote, is there any kind of Republican surge there? We can check in Miami-Dade as well. We are getting, again, well over half the vote, I think, out of Miami-Dade. You can see here, this is a bit of a fallback so far from what Clinton got in 2016. 64% for her, 50.
Incumbent Heidi Heitkamp. Let's go over to Pennsylvania, where Senator Bob Casey is running for his 3rd term.
Joining us now, former Pennsylvania governor and DNC chairman Ed Rendell in Philadelphia. Governor, thanks for being with us. We're seeing some early numbers from our voter analysis suggest that Democrats could have a pretty good night in some areas, including the Rust Belt. When you look at 2016...
So it's not looking that much different across the board. The question there is some kind of same-day surge for Republicans to get them back to Trump levels right there. On the House side, there is one competitive race there that Democrats have been targeting. We're starting to get some returns from here. Again, this is a vacant seat. This is an open seat, I should say. The Republican incumbent, Dennis Ross, decided not to run for re-election. We got 2 counties coming in here. This is Hillsborough. This is about half the district population-wise. Trump carried this portion by a couple points in 2016. Good news for the Democrats. They've gotten out ahead here with more than half the vote counted. Probably, though, when you looked at this district, they might need to be ahead by a little bit more. This is going to be a Republican area we expect here. So the initial indication may be a little more positive for Republicans in that competitive district. But again, statewide, you can see early on, not so early on anymore. We got a lot of vote in. Gillum and Nelson tracking pretty closely to each other and running ahead right now.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. We have a camera dedicated to you tonight. So later when it gets really tight, just flap your arms and we'll come over there to you. We are joined here by a native Floridian who also happens to be the NBC News political director, Chuck Todd. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I wanted to show Rachel, you went from Alaska to Key West, but it's not fair to our friends in Guam.
You know what?
I mean,
again,
yes.
I nailed on Guam.
On Guam. And apparently that's the first flip of the night.
Is it really?
Yes. Remember, we learned who the Democrat is now the next governor of Guam.
So Democrats have picked up the Guam governorship.
Guam, all right? So there it is.
Stand corrected.
You know what?
We needed you.
What's that?
We needed you.
Who knew? What's interesting to me about Florida is the fact that those two races aligned suddenly, the Senate and the governor's race. For most of this campaign, they had stayed
separate tracks.
That's right. Gillum had sort of started to pull a small but consistent lead, and Nelson and Scott were coin flips. Scott ran a brilliant campaign for, I would argue, a year. Well, let's say if it was 1 year of a campaign, he ran a really brilliant campaign for 50 of 52 weeks. And in the last 2 weeks, because he stayed away from the president, he distanced himself from the president, he tried to run above everything. President came twice, and Scott had to be with him twice, once in Fort Myers 10 days ago, once the other night in Pensacola. Yeah. The pattern of where the president visited in the last 2 weeks and the downturn in the statewide number for that Republican candidate was pretty consistent across the country. When I've talked to Republican pollsters, Ted Cruz lost 4 points after the president visited.
Really?
That's why McSally and Heller didn't want him to come in the last visit. I think that Scott's going to ask himself, should he? Look, I had a strategist say to me, here's the problem with Trump. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't win without his base, and with him, you can't win the
Explain how Gillum played that, because Gillum in the last we've been trying like hell to get him on our show, like everybody has. He's determined to stay local.
Well, I think in a governor's race, you want to, look, I think nationalizing him got him the nomination in some ways. But at the end of the day, people, most voters aren't like us putting them in red and blue, T-shirts, okay? Most people, when they decide on their governor...
Where things are moving right now, look at this. In the House of Representatives, 5 Democrats are already leading in Republican districts in races that are too early to call. Remember, Democrats must pick up 23 Republican seats and not lose any of their own to become a majority in the House of Representatives. Very early. We're counting down now to the next round of poll closings. More early tests of whether the Democrats are on track to win back the House or possibly the Senate at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Polls close in North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia, 3 states President Trump won back in 2016. Jake, this is potentially hostile territory for the Democrats.
That's right, Wolf, and we're heading into Trump country now, and Democrats are on the defensive, especially in the Senate race in West Virginia. Incumbent Senator Joe Manchin, one of a handful of red state Democrats in tough fights for his reelection. He's being challenged by Republican Patrick Morrissey. We're also watching the governor's race in Ohio. Democrat Richard Cordray is in a close race with Republican Mike DeWine in this crucial presidential battleground state. The current Republican governor, John Kasich, is term limited. Polls are going to close in Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina just moments from now. That's Trump country. Wolf?
Yes, we're getting ready for some more poll closings, but things are beginning to shape up in some of these states already.
We're starting to get a sense of the early House map. Can the Democrats get that net 23? And you mentioned, let me just use, you see the races over there where people are leading. It's kind of misleading because some of these Republicans are leading in safe Republican districts. Some of these Democrats are leading in safe Democratic districts. So let's look at the races that would be pickups if they changed. You have 6 Democrats, now leading in Republican-held districts. That's the goal for the Democrats tonight. To get to the 23, you got to flip. And so 6 Democrats now leading in Republican-held districts, 1 Republican leading in a Democratic district. So if Republicans flip Democratic seats, obviously you have to complicate the math. Let me start there, just because you see who's that Republican. This is down here in Georgia, very early results. I would be very surprised, given the composition of this district, if the Democratic incumbent, Sanford Bishop, were to lose. This is usually a safe Democratic seat, but we'll watch it. But watch it. We'll see. There's a governor's race there. Sometimes in a big statewide election, things change, so we'll keep an eye on that one as it plays out.
Now, go to Virginia 10, because it's developing over there.
If you come in here now, this one just started to get some results here. Virginia 10 is the race we've talked about all night long. For the Democrats, in the first wave of results, especially in the Mid-Atlantic to the east, this is critical. This is an absolute must-win for the Democrats on the path to 23 or more. And again, early results, but that's just what they wanted. It's just what they wanted. In the Northern Virginia suburbs, Washington, D.C. is right here. Arlington County, Fairfax County, you stretch out this way here. Jennifer Wexton is a must-win for the Democrats. So as results start to come in, the first wave of results in a district, if you're trying to win this seat and you're the Democrats, you're breathing a bit easier. But let's watch. It's still early. But again, one of the challenges, we talked about this just in Florida. Can the Democrats flip 1? Can they flip 2? Can they flip 3? When you're trying to get to 23, it matters in these states with opportunities. So we're going to keep an eye on this district down here. Southeast corner of Virginia just disappeared on me there. Scott Taylor, I don't know why the map did that. Virginia's 2nd district is over here. I'm going to come out of the map just to see. Every now and then we get a good... Those results just disappeared. I don't quite know why. But we do have results in the 7th district. This is another one of these pickup opportunities right here. Abigail Spanberger ahead. 10% of the vote in here. So you start to watch this. But pretty close. 442 votes. This is a hugely contested district. Richmond suburbs versus Tea Party country here for David Bratt. We'll see if that plays out right there. We take this off now. We go back. I want to go back to this other district here. The reason it flipped, the reason this data disappeared, I had it in a pickup opportunity. And while we were talking about the district, Scott Taylor went ahead. That's why it went out there. Scott Taylor now ahead in the district down here, the 2nd district, 51 to 49. But again, a very close race. If you're the Democrats and Republicans looking at this map, trying to do the calculation, can the Democrats get to 23? There's one pickup opportunity for the Democrats there. A 2nd there that's very close. A 3rd down here where the Republican has just pulled ahead, but it's narrow. So the Democrats are looking, can we get 1, 2, or 3 out of Virginia? Then you pull it back out. Again, a number of opportunities down here in the state of Florida. If you want 3 Democrats in the state of Florida right now leading in Republican-held districts. Those districts are here, here, and here. And so we're going to watch this one play out throughout the night. The goal is 23. Democrats believe this side over here, at least enough seats to get most of the way, Wolf, and now we start to get more.
The polls are closing in 3 more states right now where Democrats are hoping to make some significant inroads. We got a key race alert in the Senate right now. Polls closing in West Virginia. Joe Manchin, the incumbent Democrat, Patrick Morrisey, the Republican challenger, too early to call in West Virginia right now. Similarly, in Ohio, Sherrod Brown, the Democratic incumbent, Jim Renacci, the Republican challenger, too early to call in Ohio as well. Take a look at the balance of power, where things stand in the Senate right now. 25 Democrats will be in the Senate, 42 Republicans, but 33 seats remain outstanding of 51 in order to be the majority. We're looking at Florida right now. All of a sudden, the numbers are coming in. The votes are coming in Florida.
They are, Wolf, and we've seen some frantic tweets from the Senate, pretty well considering how tight of a race we thought this was going to be. Indiana, another. Just like Florida, the story is that this is a Republican. It's taking some time for the votes to come in Hoosierland. Nia, to you on the governors.
Thanks, Dana. In Florida, this closely watched governor's race, Andrew Gillum ahead still by about 67. Over Ron DeSantis. This, as you said, Dana, a race that the Trump family is closely watching at this point. 33% in. in this race, trying to become the nation's first black woman governor. 1% in at this point. Brian Kemp leading. And I'll go to Wolf now.
All right. Thanks very much.